So many people use a credit card that ends up putting them in a financial trap that they simply can never recover from. See, I've talked a lot about being in credit card debt in my 20s. I was a young kid, stepped on a college campus for the very first time. I had access to credit cards, which allowed me to buy things that I didn't need, and more importantly, things that I couldn't afford. Now, fast forward to my 30s, when I look back at that time, I realized that I was using credit cards incorrectly. So in today's video, I'm going to be walking you through a real life scenario that occurred that allowed me to use what's called credit card floating to ensure that the money that I had tied up in my investments, the money that's in my emergency fund, were able to stay where they were allocated to. And I was able to use the bank's money to be able to get an interest-free loan for over 30 days, and in some cases up to 60 days. Once I was able to get myself out of debt, I realized that most people mistake credit cards as additional cash flow, and that's where they get themselves in trouble. See, the goal here is to use it as a tool. It's a cash flow tool only. And the way that we use credit card floating, it allows us to be able to push those payments out as far as possible and keep more cash in our pockets while simultaneously not paying any interest on anything that we charge on the card. I haven't paid credit card interest in over 15 years using this process that I'm about to actually show you guys. All right, so now we're taking a look at a sample credit card statement that I found online. Now, this is going to allow me to show you exactly how the credit card float system works. And then I'll tie that back to the real life scenario that I had a couple of months ago that allowed me to pay a $4,200 bill that I had and not pay any interest on any of that money that was charged to the card. So right now you're taking a look at this sample statement here. And at the top, you'll see there's a balance of $3,663.23 and the minimum payment, $36.63. We don't look at minimum payments anymore. That's how they trap you with those minimum payments. Now, there's going to be two dates that you're going to be wanting to make sure that you're extremely aware of when you're looking at your credit card statement. The very first is the minimum payment due date. And in this scenario, that is May 24th of 2015. Yeah, I know this is an old credit card statement, but it works for illustrative purposes. And then if you look to the right here, you're going to see statement period. That's the other dates that you need to be aware of whenever you look at your credit card statement. And the dates from that are April 1st through April 30th. For example, you go out on April 30th, you charge something on your credit card, and by the 24th of May, everything that you charged on the 30th is due. And if you don't pay it in full, then that's whenever interest is incurred. Whenever I was in my 20s, I didn't even think about this. I didn't even know about it. I just was paying attention to how much was my minimum monthly payment, and I was making sure that I had enough just to pay that. And that is essentially one of the biggest reasons of why it took me so long to get out of credit card debt. Let's take this a step further, and let's say that instead of charging something on your card on April 30th, you waited one day and you charged it on May 1st. What you've essentially done is you've maximized the credit card float, because everything that you charge on your card between May 1st and May 31st is now due on June 24th. So you've essentially given yourself 55 days to be able to pay off anything that you actually charged on your card on May 1st of that year. Once I learned about this, this was an absolute game changer for me. I could use the bank's money and I could float this credit for almost 60 days, almost 2 months before any interest occurred. And I could just cash flow the payments. I could break them down into 3 payments, 4 payments, whatever my payment frequency looked like, as long as I was able to get it paid off before June 24th of that year. So the real life scenario that occurred for me is I had a tax bill that I had to pay. It was $4,200. And what I essentially did is I used this same credit card float process. I waited one day after my credit card statement closed, and that essentially gave me 55 days in order to pay off that debt. And I was able to cash flow that just with the monthly paychecks that I was getting from my job. See, these are the things that we don't think about, but makes life so much easier for us. I mean, who would have thought that I could use a credit card for almost 2 months and be able to pay something off and not pay any interest? I could have paid this $4,200 that I had to pay. I could have just went, paid in cash, and it would have been done. But guess what? This process allowed me to maximize my investments. I have investments that I make every single month, and it's on my budget just like a bill. I was able to continue to do that throughout this process, and there was no impact. It allowed me to keep the money that I have in my high yield savings account for my emergency fund in my account, earning about 3 to 4% in interest. Not a lot, but that's money that I leave there and I don't even touch. I don't even think about it most of the time. And this process caused the least amount of disruption to my daily life. Now, this took me a really long time to understand how credit cards worked and how to actually avoid paying interest. And I had to have a lot of discipline in order to make sure that I could follow this process and not get myself back into credit card debt. I view credit cards similar to how I view cash. It's just a cash flow tool to actually be able to get the things that I need and I want and not have to actually disrupt any other part of my life. I've been using this process for over 15 years and it has allowed me to not pay 1 cent in interest. Is credit card floating something that you've heard about in the past, or is this just something that you've heard about during this video? Leave a comment down below and let me know.